Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 59. My name is Jay Oza. I am one of the mentors for the Coursera's, well, actually now the course name title has changed as we have, they've created, Dr. McGarrity has created a new version. It's now called Fundamentals of Public Speaking. It's a specialization. And I've been a mentor ever since they had mentors. I would say now we're close to 2 years. And one of the things we do, myself and Julie and Sana, is to support the Coursera community, people who are interested in improving their public speaking skills, but then also use it for people who are not taking the course. So we try to reach a much wider audience than just Coursera. And I'm based out of New Jersey, and I'm actually more like an executive coach. And one of the things that I'm currently doing is I'm actually writing a book. In fact, it's going to go to an editor, and it's going to be on public speaking. And I would say part of the reason I wrote the book was because of the mentoring that I've done. And I'm kind of taking certain parts that's covered in the course, but focusing more on the practicing side of public speaking. And that's what my book's going to be. In fact, it's going to go to an editor next week, and then hopefully it'll be done by early January. So at this point, I'd like to have one more thing before I go on. Today we have a very special guest for this episode. It's Dr. Matt McGarrity of University of Washington, the creator of this outstanding course. And many of you who have taken the Introduction to Public Speaking course, I thought that was an excellent course. I personally took that course 5 times. And not just viewing the videos, I did all the exercises and the speeches. So I love that course, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to mentor it. And now, from what I've seen with this Fundamentals of Public Speaking, I think it's even better than the intro course. So we'll have Dr. McGarrity talk more about it, and we'll then do a Q&A with him and get to know more about it. Because I think this is the first time we've done a show with Dr. McGarrity, so we're going to have some questions for him. So at this point, I'd like other people who are on the show to introduce themselves, and then we'll have Dr. McGarrity give us a 3-minute pitch on why somebody should take this Fundamentals of Public Speaking course. Okay. Dr. McGarrity, you want to go next?
Sure. So as Jay mentioned, my name is Matt McGarrity. I'm a principal lecturer at the University of Washington. I've done now a handful of MOOCs, but this is the first specialization that I'm launching.
Julie?
Well, welcome, Dr. McGarrity. I'm just so thrilled to have this talk with you. And thank you, Jay, for setting it up. Julie Wolf-Finkelstein, I am a mentor. I started following Jay's footsteps and was really great. I actually have been doing it for over almost 2 years, right? And I'm also a co-founder. I supported Jay in creating the Speech Talk Live group. One other program that came out of this wonderful class, Introduction to Public Speaking, is on Saturday mornings. I host a show that's a reading and discussion group uncovering our success. And we read books and then discuss the content on skills and practices for success. And it came out of this students talking to me that they have inability to talk. They were so afraid to even doing oral articulation. So far, the program's been going on since March last year. So almost 2 years. Outside of doing the mentoring, I enjoy coaching, and my key passion is to create collaborative opportunities. So I'm starting a new organization called Innovative Alliances Group. I can barely get the name out of my mouth. I'm creating a website. I'm hoping to create a community where entrepreneurs or opportunity-minded individuals from around the world can create projects and opportunities together to have a ground level success. So that's what I hope to do. Big vision, have to take a little bit of time. Thanks, Jay.
Sana? Sana, go ahead. Oh, Sana, can you hear me?
Hello, everyone. Yeah. So, hello, Jay, Julie, and Professor. I'm Sana from Tunisia. I'm 38. I'm a digital communication manager. I've been on Coursera since 2012, and I jumped on the Introduction to Public Speaking course as soon as I found it. I've been also a mentor, I think it's been like for 2 years too. And I'm really eager to discover the new form of this very interesting course.
Okay, Sana, thanks a lot. Okay, so at this point, we're going to put Dr. McGarrity on the spot. He's going to give us a 3-minute pitch, and we're going to use this pitch. And in fact, if you're watching this, I'm going to send this out separately as a URL in the discussion forum, and you can use this to send it out to people that you think could benefit from taking this course. So at this point, I'm going to shut up and give it to Dr. McGarrity to give us his 3-minute pitch on this fundamentals of public speaking specialization. Take it over, Dr. McGarrity.
All right, so the specialization is called Dynamic Public Speaking, and it's a 4-course specialization. And in approaching this, I really wanted to break up the study of public speaking into some discrete parts. The idea is by the end of this specialization, by the end of each course, you will have advanced in some particular way the skill set that you have for public speaking. So there are 4 components to this specialization, 4 courses. There's a Fundamentals of Public Speaking course, Informative Speaking, Persuasive Speaking, and Speaking to Entertain. So I'm going to talk through each one of those. To begin with, we start with the Fundamentals course. Now, in the fundamentals, we're basically covering the core skills you would need in order to develop basically any type of presentation. We talk about how rhetoric and linguistics affect how you can design and present ideas in a clear and compelling way. And you're able to present these ideas in a way that doesn't make you very nervous. So we talk about fear of public speaking. So the fundamentals course establishes the core set of traits that you're going to use throughout all speeches. After we've got the fundamentals down, we move on to, Cicero would call them the duties of the orator, to teach, delight, and move. So we start off with informative speaking. This would be like when you have to give a project update, or when you have to convey an idea to an audience that doesn't quite understand it. So we start off with speaking and inform, and we go through how to design messages that allow people to understand ideas that might be complex. We talk about the presentation of the self as credible, how you can convey your ethos to an audience. So we do that in the informative class. Then we move on to persuasive, to move, how to speak in a way that will move audiences. Here we're getting into ways of thinking about how to present argument in a way that's inviting rather than pushing away. So how can you convince people to donate to an organization? How can you convince people that your policy at your workplace is one that should be pursued? We'll get in here into thinking argumentatively, but in an inviting way. And then we also spend a great deal of time talking about writing stylistically for the ear. Then finally, we move on to the final course in the specialization, Delight. How to tell stories in a vibrant voice. So here we'll get into storytelling techniques as they relate to public speaking, and also dig deeper into issues of prosody, how to convey vocal variety and excitement in your voice as well as in your presentation. So those are the 4 courses. Each course is anchored by a major assignment. In the fundamentals course, you design and deliver a short 5-minute talk, really about anything, but it can be about your job duties. In the informative speech, you have to convey a new idea to your audience. In the persuasive speech, you have to convince us of a policy. And then in the final assignment, in the final course, you tell us an interesting story. All of these assignments are peer-reviewed, and we can analyze and get feedback from others.
Okay, that was excellent, Dr. McGarrity. Now we know how, oh, you're muted. Okay.
I said, I think that was 3 minutes and 1 second.
Wow, you were actually timing it.
Oh, I live to hit my time marks. I really gotta make sure I park it right where I want it to park. So
boy, now you know how pros do it. All right, Dr. McGarrity, thanks a lot. We needed that because that was very compact and excellent, and I think I learned how it actually gets done now. It's excellent. I have a few questions, and guys, if you have any questions, just unmute your line and I'll call you up, okay? And do you have 15 minutes, Dr. McGarrity, to spend some time with us?
Oh yeah, most certainly.
Okay, great. So I think one of the things I'd like the audience to kind of understand is that, you prepared the first version, the introduction to public speaking, and now you're moving into this fundamentals of public speaking. What did you learn from, because that was on the Coursera for, I guess, at least 3 years, maybe longer. And what are some of the lessons that you learned from that as far as how people are using that course, and what are they learning from that course? And what are you trying to accomplish with this? You've broken it down into 4 specialization, but what do you expect the students to get out of it after they take this course that is better than what they were getting from the previous version?
Okay. Oh, that's I like the way those 2 parts are linked. So the first one is what did I learn? So that's a big question. This has run in various incarnations for over 3 years. So when I first built it, it ran on Coursera. This was back when we did sort of you would cohort it. So it would run for 10 weeks and then it was gone away. So it ran on Coursera, then it ran on edX, then it ran back on Coursera, then it ran on a small learning management system, Canvas. It ran on their Canvas MOOC network. And then I've been most on Coursera, and it ran at least maybe once, maybe twice more on edX. So it's been on various platforms. I think for a lot, what I was learning the most was having to constantly revise stuff for different platforms. So I got a sense for how the platforms are different and how to design for that. I don't know, I would say in many ways, what I learned was designing MOOCs is kind of like I would design a class. I'm always very concerned with the student experience. So not just what I say in the 50 minutes or 2 hours that I have with the class, but what they're doing between classes, or what they're doing when they meet with their practice session. And so I would say the thing is, I still have that notion of trying to capture the entire, build for the entire learner experience, but it's very different in an online platform because I don't know how long they're going to spend between lessons. It could be 1 hour, it could be a year. So trying to design stuff that is useful more on its own and in relation. So when I teach a lecture class on campus, I know I've got them for 10 weeks. We work on a quarter system. I know I've got them for 10 weeks. They may not like that, but they have got to show up for 10 weeks. I know what their experience is going to more or less be. I don't really have that in a MOOC. And so I think really the mistake I made, which is not a bad one, but the mistake I made in the first course was building it as a 10-week experience, or at best, a series of 3 interlinked week experiences. And what I would say happens now in the new course is everything's modular. So all the, there is an experience there. If I say, like in the first course, the fundamentals course, hey, we're going to be working on developing support and talking about that support. That exists as a chunk of 5 lessons, but people may not watch it in that way. So each lesson is sort of a standalone. Each lesson can be pulled out and circulated and shared, by the way. And then each lesson has its own little small lesson summary in it. So I would say in one of the things I learned, and maybe this is just because this is more of a design side, was really trying to make everything super useful at the video level. When I first did the MOOC, I get to, if I've got a class of 50 minutes, and they said when they recorded this, they say, just do it like you do your large lectures, it'll be great, but that's a different medium. And so if I kind of have a boring 10 minutes in a 15-minute chunk, or boring 7 minutes in a 15-minute chunk, that's okay, because they're not going to leave, and I got them at the end of the 15 minutes, so they've done that. I can't have that in a MOOC, because if it gets boring or if it gets irrelevant, you can just turn it off. So I really had to make each lesson a standalone, valuable piece of public speaking learning. And so that was an atomization that I didn't have. So that's, boy, that was a long answer to one very small question. But it was what's going to be, what did I learn? I thought the first class was great, but it was much closer to what it would be like to be in a classroom of mine. but that's not what people are doing when they watch it. So what's better about the new courses? They're weaponized for online. It is really designed to be understanding how someone might mix and match these lessons and still allow it to be useful, to have a basic level of expectation so that everybody can participate in some way, and then lots of different types of activities. There are more small assignments in these new courses than there were in the old courses, simply because I've broken it up, I've got 4 courses of 5 weeks, and that normally gives me the opportunity to do a major anchoring assignment, a minor assignment, and then a couple of small analysis assignments that are optional as well. So I think the new courses are more useful to more people.
Right, excellent. So, but essentially, I think you kind of said that the first course, the version 1, the Introduction to Public Speaking, was essentially how you would give it in the lectures at University of Washington. And this one, the content is essentially the same, but it's modular to the point where people can kind of pick and choose on which module they want to learn and how they want to learn it. It seems like that's the only difference. But as far as the overall content, this is a question that comes up. People are always wondering, like, when I'm taking an online course taught by an eminent professor like you, am I getting the same? What would I get? Am I getting the same type of thing? Of course, they're not going to have it live, but is the content essentially identical to what the students at University of Washington get?
Well, I would say it's a different medium, so it's always going to be a different experience. Now, I also teach, in addition to MOOCs, I do teach 4 credit public speaking courses for the University of Washington. So there are some classes that I teach that are just still within the University of Washington system, but they're online. Now, I would say the new courses are the highlights are still the same as they were in the old course. I would say but there's more content than there was in the old course, and the content that is the same, I would say, is tighter. But I would say, looking at the old course and the new course, it's probably about, certainly all the videos new, but I'd say in terms of the concepts, maybe it's about across the 4 courses, maybe about 40% the same, 60% new and different stuff. Certainly by the time we get to the later courses in the specialization, we're just talking about stuff. In the one I'm working on now, the informative one, we're talking about PowerPoint presentation slide design. We never did that before. The last course is all new content on storytelling and prosody. So that's the difference between the 2 MOOCs. Now, the difference between what happens in an on-class version and what happens in a MOOC, well, they have strengths and limitations. I certainly, I've done this enough now. I certainly wouldn't say, oh, well, on-campus class is always better. It's not. There are things that I can do in an on-campus class that I can't do in an online class. I can say, hey, go ahead and stop. Here's how I would say it. Here, try running it again. So I can do back and forth in that regard. But I can't do that as much in a MOOC. Now, that said, I think the benefit of any type of online learning is its asynchronous quality. So if I'm working with a class, so I'm about to do, I sometimes will do short classes. So I do large classes for sort of traditional age students, and then I'll do short classes for, I've got one that I'm doing next weekend for the public administration degree. So these are mid-career people in nonprofits and government. And so I'll do kind of a short course for them. Now, the challenge of that is it's so concentrated. I'm there personally, but we do 8 hours a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's really fast to move through that material. What a MOOC gets you, or what online gets you, is some people are going to be really fast with certain stuff. They can take a look at it, they can do the assignment, they can just jam through it. Some people are going to take more time with it. So they get to be able to spend 2 weeks with the material, whereas somebody spent maybe 2 days with it. You don't have that sort of flexibility in a classroom. So even though people say, oh, there's not that personal interaction, there's maybe not, but you can tailor the learning experience more to what you need in an online environment because it's modular and you control how synchronous your experience is.
Okay, at this point, I think, Julie, you have a question for Dr. McGarrity, so I'll go to you now.
Oh, thanks, Jay, and welcome, Santa. I'm sorry, in my rush to get my intro out, I dropped the ball, so I'm so happy for you to be here. Dr. McGarrity, I've been actively tracking out and practicing with the fundamentals class that you have, and one of the things that I really think the students enjoy and really perks up the interaction and the level of conversation is when you enter into the dialogue by creating that exercise on about the interests of the cities. And I think particularly it was very useful that you gave us some feedbacks. Like for one of the students, you said, that's a good answer. I'm gonna Google that. So I really just want to give you that feedback. And I think Jay has a correlated question perhaps you could answer. And that is what Jay's question is, and I asked Jay to extend that. What can we do better? And I'm not sure what the we means, but I'm going to turn that over to Jay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is more like, we're mentors. We've been doing this now for 2 years. So we have a pretty good idea what's working and what's not working when it comes to mentoring and how to create this enriching environment for students. I mean, a lot of it also has to do with the student involvement, too. And one of the things we initially started was to have this show, especially for short speeches, give people an opportunity to come on and put a little pressure on them, because they're dealing with people that they're not known. But it's a very low stress environment. But it's still, a lot of people have this fear of just getting on the call, especially, let's face it, like a lot of foreign students who can write real well, but they still have that apprehension of talking to people that they think are speaking better English than they do. So we tried it, but it wasn't really that successful for a number of reasons. A lot of these places don't have the bandwidth, speed, and the time differences. So that's when we kind of stopped that idea and just said, let's just take all the questions that are coming up and do a weekly show and kind of disseminate that information, and also use it as a way to some of the things that you did in that first course where you take a speech and you do an evaluation. So we tried all those different things to kind of get people to interact more. So those are kind of things we're doing. So I just wanted to kind of find out from you as mentors, what do you think, based on what you have seen now for a number of years, that we can do to help the students even more than what we have already done?
Can I try to answer you, Jay, about international students, foreign people who are in different time zones, in the other side?
Asana, you're breaking up.
Internet.
You're breaking up.
Sorry.
Your mobile is, we're not able to hear you. You want to try again?
Okay. Okay, so I was trying to say that more about the issue of time zones, internet connection. You can notice that I'm already suffering from that. Countries don't have the same quality of, so sometimes it's frustrating because even for watching the videos of the course, sometimes it's hard to have the video loading and just to keep on following the course with the same level of quality, let's say. And also it is difficult sometimes for some students to follow up due to let's say logistics. I mean, their computers where they are studying this course, I mean, let's say the environment is not sometimes very helping those students. And maybe this, I'm not justifying why they won't finish the course, but it will take them, let's say, longer to adapt and adjust to the course and with the difficulties they are facing.
Right, right. Yeah. Those are some of the challenges, Dr. McGarrity, that we've faced as trying to get more people involved and give them that rich experience. Some of these are outside our control as mentors because we don't control technology and bandwidth speeds. But once we have done with few people, it has worked well. And also another thing we have to realize is a lot of these people have other things that they're doing besides taking this course. A lot of them are working, a lot of them are students. So getting them, but these are some of the things we're trying. And I just wanted to kind of find out from you, because you were working with students, what's working in the academic side that we could kind of replicate, or is it a fair even comparison? Is it apples to apples comparison at that point? All right, Dr. McGarrity, go ahead.
Well, it varies. So is it an apples to apples comparison? It can be. Again, though it's not, the comparison isn't what I think a lot of people thought it would be at the outset of this. They thought it would be, oh, this is going to be like a university online. And they're not, because that experience is so very different. So the comparison I would now make to MOOCs is less and less the classes that I meet with 2 to 3 times a week, and I've got stable assignments. I don't think that's so much the analog. I mean, some of the content can be the same, but again, for me, the analog is closer to maybe short courses that I'll work with, but more often than not, professional students that I'll work with. So we know, right, the demographics certainly of my course over the years, I ran multiple surveys on this. My course over the years, the demographics are mid-career people, right? They're mid-career people, usually with at least a college degree, if not an advanced degree, right? Huge amounts, I think, I forget the percentage, but huge amounts of people with master's degrees, MBAs, MPAs, some type of professional development. So that's kind of the audience. So the concerns of that audience are different than the concerns of a group of 18 to 22-year-olds. But I would say I've done a lot more in terms of classes, workshops for professional audiences. So in terms of what makes speech education better is always make it realer. Any speech class is automatically fake, right? Apart from this class or Toastmasters or something like that, no one gathers for the intended purpose of giving speeches and nothing else, right? Normally we gather for a reason, and speech is essential to the pursuit of that reason, either in terms of clubs or certainly in terms of work, right? At work, you don't meet just to do talks. You meet to do budget updates or to do project development. You meet for a reason. And it's in dealing with those real subjects that you actually have to grapple with what I would say is the thing that maybe this course does that if you go buy a book, a business book at the airport about public speaking, it doesn't. They tend to talk only about delivery. As someone who is born out of the rhetorical tradition, I'm looking at invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. And so I'm concerned with how do you craft that message for the oral medium? That's a lot of trade-offs. And speaking in generalities about that doesn't help. And in fact, quite honest, here's a little tip. If you ever run a workshop, I want people to do a speech within the first 30 minutes of us meeting. And that's for a couple of reasons. So like I said, next weekend I've got this professional group that I'll be working with, and I'm going to want them to speak almost immediately on something that they know. So it's basically, for this professional group, I'll do the assignment that we do for now the first course in the specialization, the key point speech. So I want them to try that very quickly. And I want them to try that, 1, so they'll be thinking about oral messages, but also 2, because I want them to immediately remind themselves of how difficult it is to grapple with these various factors. Because if I just say, oh, make sure your points support your thesis, everyone goes, well, yeah, of course, I know that. It's not that it's novel content, it's that it's skillful in its application. So when I'm running a class, I almost kind of want people to have challenges very early on so that then we can get into their content and grapple with their content, because that's the interesting part. And honestly, that's the difficult part. So on the courses, I'm trying to make the assignments more open so that people can just do what they need to do. So if they've got to do, an elevator talk for their job, I want the class to be able to provide that. Now, the challenge is I want them to do what they would do for their job, make it realer, the speech assignment, but at the same time, we're not their real audience. So if someone's coming in and talking about the importance of repair, or how to repair, a MRI machine, well, I can't, I'm not the audience for that. But no matter how real that speech is, I'm just going to be like, well, that sounds like that's good. Sure, give it a whirl. But I wouldn't want to be in an MRI machine that wasn't properly maintained. So I don't know. I think there's always a balance in any speech class, but especially with speech classes that are aimed at professionals, people who have jobs, who are using the class for a reason, trying to find some balance between speeches that are real, that have actual live ammo, content that you have to grapple with, that demands intelligent trade-offs, and thinking about the audience that is in that class that doesn't have that expertise. So generally, they tend to be specialized topics discussed in a more general way for a general audience. So I think that's kind of generally where I've tried to direct more of the assignments, because it seems to strike a balance between those two. Now, in terms of the other stuff, in terms of access, I think this has been, at least so downloads are always an issue. Thankfully now, being able to download all the videos is just the default. It used to be they wouldn't let you download. So if you were in a place that had spotty internet connection, you were in trouble. Now I think it's better that all the downloads are available, but also that everything's really moving towards being built for phones. Because as spotty as an internet might be, your 4G or your 3G might be a lot better. Now, there's still, I think, some things, different platforms are dealing with this differently, really trying to reduce the size of those video files, but only up to a point, so they don't look kind of spotty and ugly. But again, I think back to a couple of years ago when they had posted these videos, they would be, super HD. You could zoom in and see the pores on my face, and no one was able to watch them because they were just so crazy big, and you would have all sorts of problems. The other thing, and there's been some interesting articles on this that I've read recently, but again, increased modularization helps. One other thing that helps with learners is if you provide support for people joining in groups. So, let's say my class has been used in this way. I remember once the American Embassy in Spain was using the course. So they had people, they'd come in and, weekly they would perform their speeches in their face-to-face meeting, but they would also talk about the content that they had online. But the platform is really designed for individual use, not for group use. And so the question is, what are some things that we can be doing to provide support on platform for people who join in groups? That might be crafting out special discussion forum spaces for them or not. And in a related way, there may be some things that we can be doing to support different language groups. So already you have no doubt seen, and initially in the old class I said this was fine, and I still want it to be fine up to a point. But people posting their speeches and they just tag it and they say, hey, it's Spanish. This is Spanish. And so they're able to use the content, but they don't have to grapple with English if that's not the battle they want to fight. Most people joining this course are probably wanting to do it in English, even though English is probably not their native tongue, but they may want to use this not only to improve public speaking, but to improve English, but some people don't. So I'm kind of up in the air on that. You can't have it go too much. Having the new peer review system is easier in that regard, to be able to shuffle through various people after you pass your minimum number. But I think greater support for language groups. In previous times, what has happened is they just formed Facebook groups. And so they would kind of do their speeches on Facebook for their Spanish language fundamentals of public speaking Facebook group. So I'm generally okay with it. Chinese and Spanish probably can support enough users on platform. I mean, you get into, you know, trying to think of a particularly small language group that I don't have, you know, that the course doesn't reach very much. You know, you get into Dutch, maybe there's not as much support for that. So I think there's stuff that maybe we can be doing for individuals, providing feedback to them and the like. But you know, once you get to a certain number, the question is, well, where are the percentages? And I think the changes that could be made need to be structural, because I mean, even when you look at the numbers, the number of people, the percentage of people who go to a discussion forum is really pretty small. You know, it's when you look at declining rates, you know, the most people are watching videos, followed by people who are maybe doing some quizzes, followed by smaller people who are doing the assignments. And then down here at this level are people who do, I've even got off my screen. Down here at this level are the people who participate in the discussion forums. So I think the discussion forums are great, but I don't know. I think there might need to be more structural work built around supporting different groups, different languages, so on and so forth. Let me just pause. So I can see my battery is about to die, so I'm going to go grab my power pack. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, one of the things that I do remember seeing is that there are schools who actually use this course. I know that there are schools out, like mostly I haven't seen in US, but outside the US, like in Philippines and Singapore, where when these students are doing their intro speech, they mention that this is part of my school requirement. I'm taking this course and here's my intro speech. So I don't know, Sana, are you seeing that in Tunisia, where people are using this course as a way to teach public? I don't know if the language is an issue there or not, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of people who take this course speak English pretty well. So what are you seeing in Tunisia?
Well, in Tunisia, Coursera isn't that much publicized, and people, I mean, there are some Tunisians. I've been on Coursera since 2012, so and I've been mentoring other courses. And to be honest, there are few Tunisians on Coursera, but those who are on the public speaking courses, I have the chance to interact with them as a mentor, and I suggested to them that we create a sort of study group, and that we maybe we can meet if we are at the same, you know, city, or just, you know, try to make some conversation even over the phone if the internet is not really working. And there were a few people who are enthusiastic at the beginning, but again, the course, since there is no real, let's say, commitment to deadlines, I mean, everybody is taking the course at his or her own pace. So there was a lot of, you know, there's a sort of non-synchronization, you know, between the different students. And as professor suggested, Facebook remain a very good solution to study groups. I mean, people like Facebook. It's a very popular social media, even here in Tunisia. And I think that it will work maybe better via Facebook than any other platform.
Right. Because Dr. McGarrity, one of the things I always tell students who are taking the course is that the best way to learn an online course is to find a learning buddy.
Yeah.
Who can keep you accountable. Because otherwise, a lot of people, as you observed, they take the course, but they just don't finish it. But like Julie's my learning buddy right there, you know. we work together and we send our speeches, even though we mentor, but we still, you know, work on trying to get better at this. This is a lot of work. It's work in progress. Dr. McGarrity, I know we got to close this out soon, but one question I have before I'll pass around, see if Sana and Julie have a question. Can you kind of give us your take on how do you view mentoring for this online environment and for this specific course, so that we have a better idea from your perspective, since you teach this course and you know how to interact with students live, but from a mentoring perspective, online is a kind of a challenge, right? And we're trying to figure out different ways we can do a better job. But I just want to kind of hear from you. What do you see as a role of a mentor for this course and this specialization?
Well, I mean, as we know, I haven't dealt really with mentors before. That was something that Coursera set up, and I thank you for all the work you've done. It's amazing. But a lot of it I was unaware of, quite honestly, because I mean I was so concerned with platform stuff, I didn't spend a lot of time in the forums, and I never knew who all the mentors were. So part of it is, I would say you probably have a better idea about some of this than I do. Now that said, so I do a lot with a similar mentoring program, but I run a speaking center. So, for the campus and actually for the communities, we've got a fair number of Seattle community members who come in. So I have a space, a physical space, and it's got a couple of different rooms and a couple of different cameras. And each one of them is staffed by I call them tutors, speaking center tutors, but it's a mentor. And what they do is they have places there for people to come in, do a speech, get it recorded, get some feedback. So I spend a lot of time training those tutors. Many of them are undergraduates, and they're doing it for low credit or no credit. Now, I've always been able to justify their working in the speaking center because one of the things that's going to make you a better speaker that I think people don't realize is doing evaluation. There's a level bump. You move from one type of speaker to another type of speaker if you've logged in hours watching and coaching others. And the reason for it, I think, is one, you're just thinking more about speech, but also because you're increasing your ability to think about how to organize stuff, how to invent stuff, what needs to be there. After you reach a certain level, if anyone's interested in being a mentor, they're probably at a certain level of speaking. I used to do ski instruction, and we'd call these, these major levels, right? So you'd hit some place, and some people would ski the rest of their lives at one level, but then some people would make that next jump, maybe take a class or something like that. And but I think if you've reached that certain point, typically what your strengths and weaknesses are. And for your weaknesses, you kind of know the mistakes you make, and you know how to get out of the mistakes you make. What coaching puts you in the position of is forcing you to think your way out of mistakes you didn't make. And that's huge, because then you have to really think creatively, dynamically about how to simplify this, how to monkey around with that. So that's why we do analysis activities in the class, because I know people initially come in, they're like, I just want to work on my speech. I don't want to watch somebody else's speech. And it's like, I swear to you, this is in your self-interest. Because if you watch stuff, listen to stuff, and analyze it, you are increasing your repertoire. You're increasing what you can do and how dynamically you can respond to a given speech situation. So that's my take on it. Now, what does that mean for online mentors? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd say there's a benefit to you. People will send, I shouldn't probably say this, people send me stuff all the time, usually from the MOOC. They're like, hey, I'm working on a speech. Can you take a look at it? Most of the time, they're really interesting speeches. So I do. There'll be stuff for like really cool things. Some people who, situations I wouldn't be able to speak in. And I get this manuscript, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? So I start monkeying around with it and analyzing it. And every time I get better as a speaker because I've helped somebody else with their speech. Now that's time intensive though. So, I mean, I don't think you can be, here's maybe an advice for community TAs, for online mentors. As much as possible, or at least as a first step, don't take a look at their video, take a look at their outline. Because a lot of things can be fixed at that stage, and you don't want to, and you can fix an outline, and really just rearrangement. And most of the time, it's when I'm looking at an outline, it's either pointing to invention, hey, this claim doesn't have enough support, or it's arrangement, this looks kind of a mess, here's how I'd rearrange it, and phrasing on those point labels. And people are like, oh my, I never would have thought of that. So some of the biggest benefit I can give to someone is that the arrangement recommendation, that happens in outlining, and it can be quick and cheap and fast to me to do. If I've got to watch somebody's, like if they're doing like a conference presentation, I could watch their 20-minute video and get all sorts of ideas, but eventually it would be like, there are massive changes that need to happen at the arrangement. Then I could have done that in 5, as opposed to spending 30 minutes on the thing. So I don't know. I suppose that's kind of the one thing that I, as an instructor, can provide, and mentors can provide, is judgment. That's the coin of the realm in speech, is judgment. Do you judge what works well? And can you do that in your own performance, and can you do that in the analysis of others? But so in that sense, what community mentors can be doing is providing the feedback that they might not get through peer review. I've tried to change peer review to increase the amount of comments that are coming back, and that's what the analysis activities are there for. But there is greater variability in peer review, I think. Yes, Julie.
Yeah, Julie, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is such an exciting topic, that what you brought up, because first of all, I think you did increase that in the first class. There's more interactions on the outline, and I can feel the energy going up. The second thing is the peer reviews have greatly improved, because you get a summary of like it, because I happen to be the first speech on the video, I got a lot of feedbacks, which was great. But what I like was I get that instead of just getting one person's like excellent, I get to see one person gave me excellent, 4 people give me good, and then I see a consolidation of the feedback. So just to let you know, that's great. In what you're talking about, it might be worth it somewhere in the course outline to say, in the course exercises, is to have a peer review, or even have a click to say, if you want a mentor to review your outline, then they will get someone who's a little bit, even if they want to schedule time for, like if Jay is willing to do it, to say schedule a hangout with a mentor, then whoever's on the mentor level can look through the queue and volunteer to do that. Just some of the ways to increase outlining activity, because I totally agree with you. That is the core architecture of constructing good arguments. So thank you for letting me have that time.
So in the informative course, one of the optional assignments is an outline. And then I've got something similar but slightly different for the persuasive course. I didn't have that as a peer review assignment in the fundamentals course, but maybe I should have. Because again, I really do think it is, the outline is a thing I can look at, and they might have a bad speech with a good outline, but I know they're going to have a bad speech with a bad outline. So I mean, it is that first firewall that I can check for to see if this is going to be a useful talk or not. So I'll have to think about where to do that. I don't know if I would say, hey, everyone gets a mentor. I think eventually this gets back to the stage where numbers just don't support that. So, but I do think maybe, I don't know, carving out, again, I just finished talking about how not everybody uses a discussion forum, but maybe carving out a discussion prompt somewhere in week 2 of the fundamentals course and saying, hey, if you're working on a speech, why don't you go post your outline here and see what other people have to say about it? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, if you as a professor to do that and you pin the thread, then that creates a constancy and a visibility that we as mentors, at least I can speak for myself, would be more than willing to go in and share my portion of the feedback. And so if 2 or 3 mentors goes in and give different feedbacks, there's a richness to that diversity. And I go back that as a systems design professional, the architecture always comes first. The rest is fluff, right? You gotta have the good architecture. And I think one of the things I most appreciate of your class is the learning about using the outline. I mean, that helped me in every conversation I make these days. So,
Sana, do you have a last question for Professor McGarrity before we close this session out? Sarah?
Yes, yes, Jay. Not really a question. I would like to thank the professor for his time. And I totally agree with Julie on her suggestion about pinning, a thread. It's more motivational for students to have the professor asking them to be on the forum, or just, like pushing them a little bit to follow one specific thread. So maybe this is where we need Professor McGarrity to be maybe more involved a little bit in the forum, just to give us a little help to help the students actually. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So at this point, Dr. McGarrity, I want to thank you for your generosity and also coming on this show. I think you have done an excellent job putting together. I thought that introduction to public speaking, I love that course because I got the feeling of being in a lecture watching you. So I got that feel, and that's what I was looking for. This is a little different feel as far as this, like little modules and stuff. So I was very comfortable with that first version. So it's going to take a little time getting used to, even though the look and feel is definitely much better than the previous one. But the first one gave me the feeling like I was actually sitting right in front of the classroom watching you give that lecture. So I'll miss that, but overall I can see a point that a lot of students are not like me who want a different type of an experience, an online experience. The last question I have so you've done this. I want to kind of find out from you personally, like, how do you feel? Like, you put this thing out there and you're providing this service that's benefiting so many people all over the world. As a person, like, what does that make you feel? Like, I'm sure that when you go to a grocery store, some people may recognize it and say, "Hey, there's Dr. McGarrity. He's the guy who did that public speaking course." I mean, what kind of reaction are you getting from people all over the world? And what's that making you? What does that feel like?
Well, I did actually have someone recognize me at the grocery store, but that was a long time ago. I don't know. It's something. I would say my job at the University of Washington, I've always been at public institutions, and my standard shtick is I'm a public educator at a public institution. So when I first was approached to do the MOOC, it was totally logical because I did workshops around the state, around the city, around the country, around the globe, doing just that. So I was always about sort of doing outreach. That's always kind of what I've done. I think the MOOC just gave me a better platform and a significantly larger audience to pursue that. I would say, as we were talking about peer review, I get out of it. I've gotten a lot out of it. It's certainly, these new ones have forced a tighter thinking and writing than I've had to do in a long time. Also, I was on sabbatical last year, and I didn't know that I was going to redo all the MOOCs. But I got a lot of new content. I've explored some new areas. So this is providing me an opportunity to be able to really crystallize some of those new ideas. But I'd say probably the biggest perk, it's always nice getting an email saying, "Oh, thank you. I did an impromptu, I did a key point speech and I got a raise," So I've got those stories are always nice to see. But it really is when somebody is able to send me an interesting problem and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be addressing the UN in a special, some portion, sitting committee of the UN. Here's what I've worked up. What do you think?" Or "I'm doing a TED Talk. What do you think? Here's what I've got." That's really, to me, interesting. And I think it helps my teaching. It not only improves it, but I also then get to turn around to the 18 to 22-year-olds who I see on a daily basis and say, this stuff works in other places. It's not just me. I've had, so we talked about Speaking Center. I've got some Speaking Center people who have gone on and they're speechwriters now. And then some of them are very established speechwriters. And they come back and they're like, "Oh yes, I have the senators do impromptus." And I'm like, "Oh, it's so good to hear." So I get to turn around and say, look, I would say my class, my approach, the rhetorical approach, probably more than what you would find elsewhere, really focuses on invention and arrangement, making sure that those are established in order to do good delivery. But I think initially when I connect with people, they're like, "Oh, that stuff doesn't matter. It's just delivery. It's all confidence." And so being able to do this, I think, one, is helpful, and that's my job as an educator. But also it allows me to show that No, it's not just delivery. Delivery is desperately important, but people who are doing big speeches, speeches that matter, they really start coming back to, how is this thing crafted? How's the logic working?
Yeah, because you might be the only person more popular than the football players on campus. Julie, closing comments, and Sana, closing comments, and then we'll wrap this up.
I just want to express enthusiasm and gratitude and appreciation, and onward next year. Thank you.
Sana? Any
Yes,
closing
Jay.
comments?
Well, I can only thank Professor for his time, for his commitment to this MOOC, to this, and we are like a little family. We are really enjoying this experience, this public speaking learning, and that's all. I don't want to be too long.
Okay, Dr. McGarrity, you get the last word.
Very short. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the work that you do for the course. I deeply appreciate it, and I agree. That's onward and upward.
Okay, well, let me thank all of you for coming on the show, and all of you that are watching this. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, send it our way. And like I said, we're here to help you, okay? So if you want to take a look at something that you're done, we'll do our best. There are a lot of students here, so if we can, if you have time, we'll certainly here to help you. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode, number 60.